Aronson finding space. Where was it? Fussie's in.
It's that Khaleesi line, isn't it? Khaleesi just picks that short line. I'm not sure which defender turns, but selfless line. Wasn't getting the ball. Game over.
Wales surely straying offside.
It might well throws himself in the way like a speed bump. Roygaard's been working off scrappy ball, and he's found a hole. Oh, what a try! Moment of vision from Cam Roygaard. Be a Mackenzie fan in the crowd. He'll be on it sometime. Or some stage it's too easy.
Fired back by Dupont. Now there's some space. Here goes Tomo Ramos. The chase from Biere.
Oh.
Look at Biere. He's got there.
Lautaro Bazaveles just staring at the floor.
Welcome everybody to the Rugby Scoop podcast, where we dazzle and razzle you with the finest breakdown in world rugby. We just finished the Australia versus Scotland game, where Scotland are victors against the Wallabies. I think the final score was 27-13, if I'm not mistaken. But nonetheless, I'm not by myself. I'm accompanied by the usual crew. We've got Vickers Miranda. We've got Hugh, the stats man. Jade will be joining in a few minutes. Vickers, how's your weekend? How is everything down in South Africa?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Pretty good, mate. The windy city never disappoints with the wind, but yeah, everything is good.
Awesome stuff. Gqeberha, if you don't know where that is, formerly known as Port Elizabeth, down in South Africa. Hugh Griffin, the stats man. No more gardening in the winter conditions of the UK. How are you doing?
Yeah, absolutely no gardening in this weather, mate. It's throwing it down with rain, and it's been horribly windy all weekend. But I'm good. I'm seeing the Northern Hemisphere catching up with the game time. We've got a bit of minutes under our belts now, and we're reasserting our dominance over you Southern Hemisphere nations.
Careful, Hugh. Careful. Nonetheless, the show is brought to you by Avanti Brandy. You can buy Avanti Brandy online, and you can use the Avanti-Scoop or Scoop Avanti code to get free delivery. Nonetheless, our show, I'm going to start off with some news making headlines this past week, and then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty. We're going to discuss the Springboks, where to now for Rassie Erasmus in the next 2 seasons. How was the autumn series in terms of performance? Obviously, they swept for the first time in 11 years. But nonetheless, news-making headlines, it's believed that Felix Jones won't be allowed to join any Tier 1 nations for the rest of this year, but could go in and coach a club rugby team. I don't know where he would be going next after a stint with England. Probably Munster, because Munster now are looking for a new coach after Roundtree resigned a few weeks ago. Head coach Scott Robertson for the Allblacks. He's determined to ask New Zealand Rugby to make overseas-based players eligible for the All Blacks. I wonder how that will go in the future. But now, good news for Stormers fans. Sasha Feinberg Ngomezulu is set to return from injury for the DHL Stormers versus the Sharks next week. Don't forget, guys, next week, URC, the best league. Nonetheless, Vickers, your thoughts now, looking at the Springboks for 2024, looking at the autumn series, first sweep in 11 years. I think Heineke Meyer was the last person to sweep in the autumn series. But nonetheless, what do you make of the tour for the Springboks? Obviously, they are 3-0, winning every single game that they played. I mean, last night's game, yes, there'll probably be a few pointers to probably pick out, But at this point in time, I mean, the Springboks look undefeated. They look unstoppable. What can Rassie do now going forward?
Yeah, I think it's a. I mean, it's a great. There's a great tour for South Africa. I think if you look at the three campaigns that they had, firstly Ireland at home, to get that one on a draw 1-1, to lose a game with the drop goal. I mean, I think Ireland at that time were ranked number 1 in the world. Then to look at obviously the rugby championship, I thought South Africa, barring the Argentina game, I think they were very, very dominant within that rugby championship. And then obviously, like you said, it's Group 3-0 in Northern Tour. It's very good for South Africa, especially like you say, 11 years ago was the last time with Heineke Meyer that we did it. I think for South Africa, if you look at Rassie, he'll probably look at something like, because we always had issues with the age of the squad. But if you look at 51 players used in the throughout 2024, I think any coach in that position to go 11 out of 13 would be really, really happy. I think if you look at that, just based on those numbers, I think you definitely would feel that the coaching staff of the Springboks will be very happy going into 2025.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I think it's been a very good season for the Springboks. I mean, if we look back in 2020, in 2019, there was a hiccup or a speed bump along the way, meaning that COVID kind of slowed down whatever plans Rassie might have had in terms of rotation, in terms of getting new players within his squad. But I think 2024 has proved significant in terms of the growth of the squad, the number of players being given opportunities. I mean, if you look at a player like Jordan Hendrikse, he was given an opportunity mid-year, and I don't think the Springbok fans were thoroughly impressed. But then in comes a Sasha Feinberg Ngomezulu. He dazzles the fans, he dazzles the coaching staff. But then Jordan Henderson gets another opportunity last night, and he stands up and he has a good performance. Not at the Sasha Feinberg Ngomezulu level, but I mean, he was kind of comfortable enough to get the small basics right. He wasn't there to wow us, but he really did the basics right. He even ended up scoring a try, maybe missed a couple of kicks, but I mean, he will grow eventually. But Hugh, what do you make of the Springboks this season? What do you make of the tour? And obviously, your favorite player, Cameron Hanekom.
Well, Cameron had a very quiet game, I think, when he came on. I didn't notice him doing much. But the Springboks, I think, over the course of this season have stretched the gap between themselves and the rest. I think they finished the year looking as strong as they've looked at all. Okay, playing against arguably weaker opposition. But I think we've seen them maybe not look their best because of how much they've rotated. Yes, we know that they've got definitely, in my opinion, the best depth and the best talents coming through of anyone in the world. But because they've rotated so much, they haven't managed to get that peak performance. So I think that's what Rassie's going to be working on next, is getting to that peak performance level. But, you know, if you say that at best they've played 7, 8 out of 10 at points this season, it's still been enough to be the best team in the world. So that's something for everybody else to think about, I suppose. But I think, the next step for Rassie is to get that peak level performance, because at the moment they're just doing enough, I'd say, to get the wins.
Yeah, fair. I mean, that's one of the other topics that's been making its way around a lot of the fan base, if I may call it, in terms of Springboks just doing enough. And a lot of people may be wanting, how can I put this? A perfect game, because is it possible at this level to probably, I mean, if you look at the Springboks for this year, and which games probably stick out is the first test against Ireland in Pretoria. I mean, they thrashed the Irish team. I'm not going to look into the Welsh game in the middle of the year. I mean, Wales were still kind of trying to find themselves, are still finding themselves. We'll get into that a bit later. Portugal, I'm not going to look at that. I mean, against the All Blacks, yeah, they were okay because, I mean, the All Blacks kind of dominated 60 or 65 minutes of those particular games. Which game sticks out for you when we look at the Springboks in 2024, where you can go, these performances, this is the standard that we want to see from a Springbok perspective, Vickers?
Yeah, Scoop, it's very difficult to say, but I would look at obviously that first game against Ireland in the inbound tour, and then I would look at the Wallaby test because we all know going to Australia, as much as we were always dominant outside, and going to Australia was always we always found it difficult. Yes, there maybe Australia also going through their own problems, but I would say at this point for me, it's just to look at the overall season, to look at the overall rugby championship, most especially, because if you look at the two New Zealand games in South Africa, I know they were in South Africa, Highveld, and obviously in Cape Town. I think as much as New Zealand were dominant at stages, South Africa was still winning the game, which is what ultimately is important at the end of the day. We also can't forget that Scoop, that as a team, if you are attacking most of the time, you're always gonna find cracks because the easiest thing to do is to tackle someone in front of you. But once you start having to attack, you need to obviously break down the defense. You need to be able to stay in your shape. You need to be able to obviously have those unexpected moments where someone does a pick and go where it's unexpected. So it's very difficult to attack. And what we've seen from South Africa at the moment is that they are attacking. Maybe that's also why it doesn't look so perfect, is because they keeping the ball most of the time, and that's what's obviously breaking down within the game itself. So for me, I would say it's definitely a very, very good start for South Africa in terms of their new structure, and their obviously with inclusion of Tony Brown. We're starting to see South Africa not defend a lot, although obviously in the rugby championship they still did defend quite a bit. But for me, it's always that one thing that when you're attacking, a lot of people think it's easier to attack. Actually, the easiest thing to do is kick the ball and defend, trusting on your defense. So I feel that's why if you're using the ball a lot, if you're attacking a lot, the risk of making mistakes is higher. Whereas on defense, it's a lot more different. We've seen South Africa as a defensive team most of the time, so it's quite new for us to criticize South Africa on obviously on attack, because we haven't seen much of it. But again, it's their first season with Tony Brown. They will definitely improve, especially if they start holding those alignment camps again. And imagine now with the kind of squad that they have, it will be much easier because everyone now is starting to understand what is needed.
No, true. Jade, talking about obviously what is needed for the Springboks going forward, we've seen a very good year for them in 2024. I mean, who impressed you from your view with regards to the Springbok? Also, I mean, DNA-wise, they game plan, the attacking shape, the defensive patterns, as Viewer has alluded to here as well, in terms of the more you attack, the more chances you'll probably have a lot of tries also scored against you. Have what you've seen this year, have their box shifted 100% away from their defensive pattern, or are they trying to implement a 50-50 style of play, 50% on attack, 50% on defense, depending on opposition?
First of all, you've got to, give them credit. They went on the interview tour and they scored, no less than 4 tries a game. So, I mean, that's impressive, for any team to go on an interview tour to score 4 tries a game, regardless of the opposition. Yes, we can argue and say, but they didn't play against Ireland or France. But I mean, to do it against England and Scotland and Wales, and so it's quite a good achievement, and it just shows that they're more attack focused. And even if we look at who he selects at 10, Rassi is more focused on that. They are much more fluent attacking team at the moment. They don't just go set play to set play like they used to. They don't just tend to go to the kicking game. They can score from first phase ball at the moment. We've seen it a few times this year. We've seen yesterday, but it was it Kurtley Arendse that scored yesterday? Yeah, Kurtley Arendse try, scoring from a set piece from first phase ball. That's difficult to do. And you've seen it a few times against New Zealand as well, to score from first phase ball as well. In the test they played against them. So it shows that they are innovative when it comes to their set pieces. They show innovation there. They show that they don't just have the driving ball, they have a few tricks up their sleeve this year. So, I mean, the attacking, let's say, the attacking playbook has increased by 5, 6, or 7 more chapters. And, that's exciting for them. Regardless of who they use, they tend to go to the same, same game plan and they keep the same shape. So that's impressive. And the other thing that also caught the eye this year was, in key situations where sometimes after a big World Cup or a big, a tournament or so where, the Boks went back to back, sometimes you'd see a few players, look like the likes of Eben or so. They haven't had the best season in the URC or so, but Eben, Peter Steff, Sia, though, they've come key in crucial moments. Look at that game just last week, the cameo that Sia Polisi had, that last 10 minutes where they went out to 7 men, marshalling his troops, getting the troops together. That's what you're looking at, that's what you're really looking at. So for me, that's what the Boks, they have experience. They know what to do in certain situations. I can go back again to last week where England were all over him in that last 10 minutes or so. They played the clock, they played percentage rugby. They went back to that with 7 men, out of 7 men back. They still didn't look like they were man short. And they actually killed the game. In that 10 minutes, we saw their class. So in key situations, in key moments of the game, they know exactly what to do. So that's experience that they do have. But yeah, like you say, their defense a little bit this year has been leaking more tries than they used to. That's been something maybe Rasif may be looking at, but like Puyo said, they got more of the ball this time. They're using the ball more, so they're not that defense oriented. I'm pretty much sure when it comes to the big tournaments again, they'll tighten up the defense. But they kept the All Blacks in Gatland, they kept them out despite All Blacks having so much possession. So that also shows that they're also a quality defensive team, maybe still the best defensive team in the world. But yeah, overall, you asked me who stood out for the Boks this year. Like I said, for me, there was guys that came through. He used 51 players, but I still go back to the senior players in crucial moments, putting up their hands, showing their hunger and desire for this team. Unfortunately, Scoop, I think most South African fans would actually admit that this was a perfect opportunity to have a real go at that world record, because I think they were on 4 games coming into the year, and if they'd won all the games, they would have been on 17. And looking who they're playing next year, they play Italy twice at home, then they got Georgia. Then they play Australia twice at home, so that's another 5 games. They could have went in a 22-game unbeaten run, and broke that world record. Just for that dominance. I think that's the one maybe that they're looking and say, okay, those 2 close games we lost against Argentina and Ireland, those are the 2 maybe. If we had won those 2, we would have broken that world record.
Interesting. Because there's a number 8 conversation also going around. They've had Kwagga Smith, they've had Lowe. Is it Lowe? What's his name again? The Blue Bulls flanker that played 8 as well. 8 and
Elric Lowe.
Elrich Lowe. They've had Hanekom now as well. They've had Visa. At this point, do you think then Visa has basically nailed that number 8 jersey? Because they've been a lot of players being used. I understand the 51 player aspect, etc. But at the same time, you still need the first name that comes up as soon as you pointed to a position. For example, if you pointed number 1, Oxenchair is the first person that comes up for that particular spot. If you pointed number 8 for the Springboks, if you pointed number 9 for the Springboks, who are the players for you that you think going forward, okay, these guys have nailed that number 8 jersey. This guy has nailed that number 9 jersey. Because if you look at 8 and 9 are really contested, but I think at 10, we probably all know who the main character is for that particular jersey as well. But 8 and 9, it's one area where I feel maybe there's not a lot of certainty around it. What are your thoughts, Vickers?
I think actually I would go as far as the 8 position is actually solidified by Visa. I think Visa has stood up. Has stood up. All the guys that were given a chance at 8, I don't think they have performed to the level that Visa is required to perform by the Bok coaching staff. I think Visa is sort of, after that ban, he sort of came back and started literally playing like his championship days with I think it's is it Harlequins? So is it Saints or Harlequins? I think it's Harlequins. So I think for me, Visa has definitely solidified his number 8. I think the one position that's still a little bit more concern for the Boks is definitely the 9 jersey, because we haven't seen an outright performance from the 9s. I would say at the moment it's probably Grant Williams is probably pipping the other 9s, but it's a question of which type of game are they playing, which game plan are they going to go with into that particular game. So I think for me, Visa is definitely number 8 is a short jersey, and then a 9. I think 9 as well with Grant. It's still a little bit not 50-50. Do you start Grant? Do you start Kobus, or do you start Jaden? And I think we still got Faf to come back if he would join the squad again. So it's a little bit tricky for the Boks in that 9 jersey. I think another jersey that's interesting to chat about is actually the number 5 jersey, because that's another jersey that seems to be bouncing around a couple of guys. Not really someone's picking up their hand there. I think that's another jersey that's probably in question. I think Fassi has sort of solidified his 15 jersey. So, yeah, I think barring that, I think look, if you're the Springboks at the moment, and you're looking at your number 8, you look at Visa, you got Errol Low, you got now Hennekom, who just came in, you got Kwacha. I think you're probably more happier. It's a question of obviously
Ross.
fighting for a jersey. Oh, and Ross, but Ross has been injured, so we're gonna see him back obviously with his club side. So hopefully we can have a good competition. But I think Visa for me has taken that jersey.
Fair point. Hugh, your thoughts on my initial question, and then looking at what Vuyo just asked now in terms of number 5 jersey in that Springbok lineup.
I agree with Vuyo. I think Visa has nailed it down. Obviously, he was missing for the early part of the season with his ban that he got playing for Leicester. But he's back in it now, and I agree that I think he's clear of Kwaga and Elric Lowe. Although you guys all know that I'm a massive Elric Lowe fan, I think he fully deserves to be in that best Bok 23. I just don't know what his starting position would be. Maybe 20 jersey is better. But number 5, I think Ruan Nokia is first choice number 5 for me, based on his line-out work. I think the Boks line-out worked very, very well with him in it. You saw that during the Rugby Championship, there was a big difference between when he was there and when he wasn't there. And he's one of those very workhorsey second rows. He always gets around the park a lot, has very decent stats in most areas. So maybe not as showy as RK Snyman, we know his strengths. But I think for the purely the set piece, I think Ruan Nokia for me is Boks number 5. But always with the Boks, and this is what I've been saying lately, is they're the only team at the moment, they're the only nation at the moment playing a 23-man game. So with the 6-2s, with the 7-1s, you can say who is the starting locks. They're going to have at least one world-class lock on the bench as well.
Yeah, fair enough. Before we go to the World Player of the Year nominations, Jade, your thoughts on the questions that have been posed regarding this forward pack: number 8 position, number 5 position, and then the scrum half chat, because I think all the other positions we already know who those first names are when it comes to naming the starting 23.
Yeah, you got to also look at the way Rassie selects his team as well and who's on the field. I mean, you can go with the Jasper Visser, but you at 8, I mean, he's a clear favorite. He's a strong ball carrier. But I mean, there is also coming a time where, if the game's open and the game's losing, opportunities for turnover, then, Kwagga Smith puts his hand up. But I mean, he's still accustomed to being on that bench and changing the game. But I mean, there's different opposition and different games, that you can select different players. I mean, obviously, Jasper Visser is not as good of a lineup option as a Cameron Honeycomb or a Evan Roos or a Ulrich Lau, for example. But in terms of his ball carrying, in terms of the work rate around the park, his close contact meters, he's been best. He's been the best. And I mean, it was when Kwagga has got to start at 8 the flu games, he hasn't really owned that jersey. So as for me, I still believe that Rassie does check his balance in his loose throw as well. He likes to keep that balance. And that's why you'll also see with number 5 lock as well. He likes a hard-working 5 lock, guy that's going to go around and low-key makes 15, 16 tackles without cheapers noticing it, like Francois Wolster did yesterday. I mean, I'm not his biggest fan, but I mean, he has come on leaps and bounds, and we have seen the lineup function much better when he's in there. Rowan Nokia is always going to put his hand up for the Bulls. I mean, he's always going to be brilliant, and we've seen it, when he has played for the Boks this year. But I mean, I still think Francois Wolster has still got that 5 jersey. I think he will still be the 5 jersey, and Eric Snyman will be on the bench because of the impact. And like you said, the Boks played 23-man game. For the 9, it's difficult. Like I said, I'm a big Grant Williams fan. But again, you've got to look at, if you're going to play a 7-1, you're going to keep him from the bench, on the bench, because he's that banker on the bench who can cover a few positions. But I mean, putting him on to start also like he did against England is brilliant as well. So for me, I really would go Grant Williams, but I mean, also depending on who you play and what's the situation, you're going to go more tactical kicking. Grant Williams can kick off both feet. He can, speed up the game as well. But if you look at experience, you might just throw Faf de Klerk in there as well. So, yeah, for now, I'll go Grant Williams.
Fair enough. Mpumelelo on the chats says the number 15 jersey is also one of the jerseys that's up for grabs, because you've got Willemse, who's going to come back from injury. You've got Apelele Fassi, who's had a solid season at 15 for the Boks. You've got Willie Leroux, who's still chasing 100 caps as well. But yeah, maybe something to ponder over the next week and into next season with regards to the 15 jersey. Also, you've got Sasha, who can double up as a 10 or a 15 for the Springboks. But nonetheless, obviously the World Player of the Year nominations were announced this past week. And obviously 3 of the men's 15s nominations are all South African. For the first time, I don't remember a time where you had more than 1 South African in the nominations, let alone 3. Now we've got 3 guys that are up that have been nominated. Ebenezabeth Vickers. You've been a big fan of Cheslin Colby this season as well. And then there is Peter Steph Dutoy, who had an amazing kickoff this season, especially against Ireland. I think that's the one game that stands out, and the one against Australia in Brisbane. Those 2 particular games where he stood out, and Peter Steph Dutoy, I mean, was running on the tram lines like no one, like old school Jean Smith. But nonetheless, Vickers, who's your player of the year out of those 3 from the Springboks? Because I think we all know that one of the 3 Springbok players will be named player of the year.
Yeah, like I said, I think as last week, I said, look, for me, I think if you look at the influence in games, I know obviously they usually say that the grinder, the one that you don't see out there, is obviously the hard working. But for me, it's still, I still believe this is the one opportunity that we can get to give it to Cheslin, because it's like if we look at a all around physicality of the player, his influences in games, just creating something from nothing. I think if you look at all these games that he's started, he's definitely had he had something in there. I think that for me, that's why I would definitely give it to Cheslin. I honestly don't believe they will, because obviously the forwards will take preference. But for me, I think Cheslin, I call him the problem child on the field. So I think it's one of those where sit in the corner and get your reward. So yeah, for me, Cheslin Colby definitely. I would definitely give it to him if I would had to make that decision.
Hugh?
It's between Peter Steff and Cheslin for me. Obviously, Peter Steff's already won it. He's really added to his game this season, or compared to what we're used to seeing him do. Cheslin has been unplayable at times. He's definitely come good towards the end of this Springbok season in the last 5 or 6 games. He was quieter. I thought there were times at which you could argue that Curtly Arendse was having a better season than Cheslin, which is no slight on Cheslin. It just says how good Curtly Arendse has been. I thought Curtly Arendse might have been nominated at one point. So I think based on that, I would go Peter Steff, but I don't mind who wins it, honestly.
Jade, who's your choice?
Kellen Doris. Why not? Why not? Why not get everybody moaning and stuff? Now, for me, I said it last week and I'm standing on it. Peter Steff the toy for me. I called it a few months ago. I think he's been brilliant this year. Sometimes he's played lock as well. And the way he changed his game, I mean, he's got a little more ball handling as well to his game. Now and then he throws an offload as well. So Cheslin's been brilliant. Eben's been good. Kellen Doris has been good. But Peter Steff is just, he's been nice to the whole year.
Yeah, but what about Peter Steff? Ibn Etzebeth was runner-up after Adi Severe last year, after the World Cup, after having a stellar season, Ibn Etzebeth. And this season has continued that form into 2024. And maybe it's a sentimental choice, for lack of a better word. But I mean, what about Ibn Etzebeth? I mean, this is one player that no one is actually considering. I mean, is there a game where he wasn't chosen? I mean, I know he wasn't picked in a starting lineup a few times, but then later on during the week, someone cops an injury and a late change, quote unquote, is has to kind of make a replacement of one of the players that have been injured during training. But I mean, it's a bit that's shown up this season.
He has shown up. He has. He's, I mean, like I said earlier on, I mean, he put his hand up, in crunch times when the box was down and needed somebody, to get him over the line. He's been brilliant. He's been an awesome leader as well, the time that he has led the team. But I just feel that, the two, Peter Steff and Cheslin, just stand out a little bit more than him, Maybe because he being a lock, you don't see that that hard work. You don't see that, that all of those cleans and all of this physicality that they do bring. I mean, people don't see it on the outside compared to a loose forward or a winger, that gets a little bit more meat pies than him at the end of the day.
Those Vuyozanga charge downs next to the rucks, next to the breakdown. But nonetheless, we got Wales and Warren Gatland to chat about. And then after that, we've got the All Blacks. And then we talk about the Wallabies. And then looking into what's going to take place in the next couple of weeks. And obviously the URC element. I mean, yeah, we say farewell to international rugby for a while now, right? 6-7 months or something like that. But nonetheless, getting into the Welsh problems, if I may call them. Hugh Griffin, where to for Wales and Warren Gatland from now on?
It's pretty clear that Warren Gatland has to go. He's not the right person to lead Wales through this next phase. He has failed to bring the team on. His selections, if you can look from the Six Nations into the Summer Tour, into the Autumn Tests, have been inconsistent, have been lurching from one ideology to another, have been not setting players up to succeed. He's gotten the environment wrong. You can see that the players don't believe in what the game plan that they're being asked to perform is. And they need a change of face. Now, that won't solve Wales's problems overnight. But Gatland, we've never seen him be the coach to bring on a group of young players. He's always been the coach to pull together an established group of players and get results out of them. So if you look at when he first came to Wales, he had the Ospreys team that was winning league titles that he based the team around, and then he had a fantastic Welsh under-20s team to base the next phase of Wales around. And then there was another good under-20s team in 2016, which he then based his next team around. He hasn't got anything like that at the moment, and there's nothing that we can say that we can point to and say, here's an example of him turning it around. If you look at, say, the tactics he's playing on the pitch, I think they're outdated. I think that he's not been able to execute a game plan that suits the players that he's got. So we need a different face, we need a different voice, we need a different bunch of ideas, but that won't solve everything. I think, there's obviously wider problems about Welsh rugby, discussing what needs to fix behind the scenes below the international level in Welsh rugby. But that it's wrong to say that it can't be improved quickly by the change of a new coach. Look what we saw with Australia with Joe Schmidt changing coach, and an overnight change. I'm sure we can all think of examples, Razzie coming into South Africa, for example, of where changing a coach has made an immediate impact. So I think that's what we need to do.
Vickers, this is a tricky one, obviously. No international team, maybe in the tier 1 region, has gone, what is it now, Hugh? 0-12 or 0-11?
0-12.
Cheapest. 0-12. As a coach, I know you probably have never had anything more than 0-1 or 0-2. But 0-12 as a coach in this situation, I'm looking at the URC element where Wales are taking, or Welsh clubs are part of, right? We've seen now the benefits for a club like Gloucester from a Scottish point of view. Edinburgh, they're thereabout. So at least on the Scottish side of things, they've got a bit of a good balance of performance and results. But then if we look at the Welsh sides, from the Ospreys, etc., I don't know. The past 2 seasons, they really haven't stood up. I think this season, they're kind of like a mid-table group of clubs from Wales, that is. And from a Warren Gatland now perspective, as Hugh has told us now, that he operated from established players from the Ospreys doing well back in the day, and then he built that team around that perspective. And then he operated from an under-20 perspective where they had a pretty good group coming through. I think Lee Halfpenny and those guys were playing in that group, or the year before. But now he's kind of stuck. Where to? He decided to take a couple of young players, he put them together. There's no tangible seniority within this group, and he's put them, he's kind of like thrown them in the deep end, and they're expected to swim. And the Welsh public seems to be not happy with this kind of a situation. But as a coach, from your perspective, what are your thoughts looking at what's transpiring in Welsh rugby?
Yeah, so it's a tough one for me. I think Gats is one of my favorite coaches. I think for me, like you have said, you have to look at everything in terms of previous, obviously with the coach history, and try to understand what is he trying to do or change within what is currently at his disposal. I think the one thing that we're talking about here is that you have youngsters. And when I say youngsters, I'm talking about guys that haven't had that kind of experience within international rugby, especially playing against tough teams that are known for performances in the big league. So I think I would tend to agree with you, although it would be sad for me to see him go. But I tend to agree. Maybe they do need a change of personnel in terms of that coaching staff. You need to find a guy that would obviously be able to nurture those youngsters, to be able to give them a bit of a better platform to work from. And obviously rugby has changed. Rugby has moved on in terms of game plans, in terms of strategies. And if Getz is the guy that hasn't moved on with rugby, then you have to look at obviously changing that and finding someone that will be able to give you that that one thing that is needed. So if you look at Joe Schmidt, for example, he took over after Eddie Jones was obviously not doing great, but he's taken the same team and literally putting it into a good position. I still think maybe if Wales could look at a guy like Dave Rennie, who didn't do too badly at Glasgow when he was up in Scotland, and then he moved to Australia, and then he didn't do too badly there as well, with actually youngsters taking the team from sort of like a mid to the top. So I think Wales would have to look at really how they can scout for a new coach, not bringing in someone that doesn't have that kind of record. There aren't a lot of coaches out there that can do that, but maybe obviously they'll have to look at what will be beneficial for their system. So for me, it's always one thing that you have to look at when it comes to coaching is what is your current position as in terms of the group, what personnel do you have, and how can you enhance that to get better. And also, as much as you're losing, you might be 11 and 12, 0 and 12, but are we seeing progress? Are we seeing something like a direction? Are we going towards direction? And if you remember, Scoop, you were always an advocate of Dave Rennie when he was in Australia, when we all talked about the amount of injuries that he had. But still, you could see that there's something where this team is going, and is that the same question when you look at Wales? And I don't think it is, and I think that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, jump in there, Hugh.
Yeah, and I want to add as well that the comparison with Eddie Jones, if you look at what Joe Schmidt has done now since he's come into Australia, is a lot of the players who are now starring for the Wallabies, Lenny Kitau, Tom Wright, etc., were players that were cast out by Eddie Jones. So it shows that selection is still a huge part of it, and it's something that a coach can be getting wrong. And a lot of the conversation about Wales at the moment is about the lack of experience, the lack of caps. I had a bit of a think about it. I had a look around, and I thought they can't have all retired. All of the good players that we had when we won the Six Nations 3 years ago, when we beat the Springboks in South Africa 2 years ago, they can't all have retired. And you look at it, and there's players like Nick Tompkins and Owen Watkin, the centres. Now, we can have a debate about how good we think these players are, but the fact is they're fit and they're available and they're not being picked. Gareth Anscombe, the most experienced fly half, dropped for this South Africa game. You can look at the front row, someone like Dylan Lewis. Again, we can have a conversation about what we think his quality is as a player. Henry Thomas as well, an experienced tight head prop, not picked, nowhere near the team. And you saw what happened to the kid, Archie Griffin, in the first half against Thomas Tutoy. These are decisions that Gatland has made. Will Rowlands played in that team that beat the Springboks in South Africa. He played yesterday. Liam Williams, another one, a guy who is fit and available and wasn't picked, and he's won Grand Slams for Wales. So it can still be. I just want to push against a bit this notion that Gatland has got no other choices in selection. I think another coach can come in, change a few faces, and have a surprisingly impactful change.
No, fair. I think that makes a lot of sense. Jade, obviously, then the players are there. What are your thoughts? Regarding this particular debacle?
Look, beginning of the year, we said Wales, we're going to give them time. They're going to lose. There's the young team. They're getting together. They with Stephen Jenkins, that was the captain at the time. We're going to give them time. They're going to chow. That's a long-term plan, long-term project. But they've just taken steps backwards. Every week, another step backwards. I can't remember the last time I watched Wales where I thought, just after the World Cup, wow, they actually had a good performance. It was a spirited performance. All the time I watch them, and I think they've been so bad. They've been poor. They're not physical enough. They're not creative enough. But then there is players that have potential, but they're gonna have to be nurtured in the right way. I don't think Gatland has the patience and has the know-how to get them out of this. I think now they need to pull their plug. They need to get somebody in. Like Vuyo said, that Dave Rennie would be brilliant. Or even if you want to take a chance and really chance it, there's a few other guys that's going around, there's Jamie Joseph, there's Liam McDonald, if you want to look at New Zealand, like South Africans as well, Johan van Graan, those guys like that. Look at somebody like that, they can, with Francois, Franco Smith at Glasgow. Look at guys like that around because, I mean, at the end of the day, people will always be attracted to the Welsh job because it's a big job. And I mean, look at the coaches they had there since the professional era. Looking at your Graham Hendricks, your Steve Hansons, your Gatlands, they've all been good coaches. I'm not sure if there's a Welsh coach that you can really look at, to get them out of this. Maybe the Stephen Jones, maybe he's one, maybe, but other than that, I don't think so. But they're going to need to get 2 or 3 experienced guys in there. Maybe it's just an 18-month plan, just to be a part of the team, a part of the setup, to help with these guys. Because at the moment, there's nobody to turn their head to. Who has the most caps in this team? Compared to, if you can compare caps, I mean, we compare caps with the Box yesterday and the Welsh team. Who had the most caps yesterday? I don't think I can get
Don't know.
But I mean, I don't think it was anybody with 50 caps yesterday.
I don't think so.
That just shows you for international team, nobody was 50 caps. So that's actually, they're going to need to get 1 or 2 guys in there, even if they are over there, even if they're not on form, just to be a part of the squad, just to be a part of the preparation, to get back to nurture these guys, because it's going to be difficult to turn it around, but they're going to have to get the right tools, the right guys in there to work with this team, because this is all they got. It's not like they've got the other proper players that they're really not selecting, or there's really a guys putting their hands up, that's not being selected. So they're going to have to be patient with this team, but they're going to have to nurture this team, and this team's got to build and improve every week and not go backwards.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Hugh, final thoughts, and then we move on to Jade's favorite topic, Razor Robertson.
I completely agree with Jade that even if you think a player might be over the hill or ultimately not good enough, if they've got the experience, if they've experienced the winning Welsh environments, like the examples that I gave, then they should be in there. I mean, for example, Josh Adams and Talupi Faletau are not fit at the moment, but both play for Cardiff and live in Cardiff. So they could have been in and around the Welsh squad for the last few weeks. Liam Williams, I believe, is living in Cardiff at the moment. So they could have been in there. To not have them in, I think there's been 7 players that were in the squad that Gatland hasn't used this autumn. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Scoop, a quick one. Based on this, I just thought about it now. I was discussing this with Coming Cloud, a few weeks ago. And during the Lions tour of South Africa, you had Wyn Jones, you had Liam Williams, you had quite a few Welsh players, Adam Wyn Jones, you had Talupi Faletau, so many Welsh players in that Lions squad. Of those players there now, it's only Adam Baird that's still playing in the part of the Welsh squad. So just think of it. And the Lions toured South Africa, 3 years ago? So in the 3 years cycle, they went from having experienced players to absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I think that's what Hugh was alluding to in terms of player availability. And obviously, some of the players are available, but Warren Gatland is being Warren Gatland and not deciding to use those experienced players into the setup. It almost feels like an Eddie Jones appointment when he was chosen for the Australia gig, where he just came in and he decided, okay, Hooper, you're probably one of the most experienced players, but I don't want you. The Iceman, what's his name? Number Foley at 10, I think, if I remember correctly. Like, he basically removed all the experienced players because he said that they were quite negative and they've lost too many games, so they'll bring all that negative energy within the
Gatland
squad.
kind of did something like that because in the Wales World Cup warm-up camp, Alan Wyn-Jones and Justin Tipuric both walked out of that camp essentially and retired mid-camp. So
there you have it then. Jade, not impressive last night, but let's look at, we've looked at the Springboks, we've touched on Wales, but let's look at the All Blacks for 2024. A lot of media outlets not entirely impressed with what has transpired in 2024 regarding Razor Robertson, the savior of New Zealand rugby. I mean, your thoughts regarding last night's game, and then obviously the overall picture of what you saw in 2024 from a New Zealand perspective.
I don't want to talk that much of last night's game because New Zealand were terrible. They were horrific last night. They were so poor in possession. They looked out of ideas. They looked like they had 1 foot on the beach in Auckland. They were absolutely bad yesterday. I mean, offloading when it's not on. Oh, they were terrible, 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 terrible. Luckily, they didn't lose the game. They could have pulled the tutti or the box yesterday and lost against Italy, in Italy. But yeah, luckily for them, they didn't. But overall, this year for the All Blacks, like I said, there's a few guys that really got opportunities. They took the opportunities. I mean, if you're looking at your Wallace Atitis, you're looking at your Tamaiti Williamses, Asafa Moas, they took the opportunity, and the younger guys coming through, Cam Roygaards, But the sad or the disappointing thing from Rice's perspective is it's only been 3, 4, 5 young guys that came through and really took the opportunity. The other guys haven't really gotten their opportunity. He still went back and selected, a few guys that, for me, he should have shifted on. I mean, if a guy like Anton Brown leaves New Zealand rugby, he won't really be missed that much, because, I mean, these guys coming through that might be more exciting than Anton Brown or a Severies, for example, the guys in that caliber. But overall, I think if you're looking at this season, I would say, like I said, 6.5 out of 10 max. I think it's a B pause for them. They lost 4 games. Yeah, 3 of them were close. The one against Argentina, they just threw the game away. They were pathetic. However, if you look at it and you're looking at the structure and the change, and we explained already, while Razor came in, it's a new coaching staff, it's a new environment. There's guys there that hasn't been a part of New Zealand. I mean, even if you look at the manager, the New Zealand squad team manager, he's been there, from Graham Henry. It was before Graham Henry. He's been a part of the team, and he's done. So there's so many change there, so much change there. The next steps for them will obviously be next year or so. I don't think we can look too much into that French series next year because we've got a team that's rumored for France to send it. So you can Argentina away. The 2 tests they're going to have in the championship, and then they got the box set up. So next year you expect them to go from having a 6.5 out of 10 to a 8 or 9 out of 10, because then Raisin's really got his mark, and he's really, he's really at his mark on the team. However, I still feel, Scoop, that the attack went backwards. The attack really, really, really went backwards. We saw it after the Australia game that New Zealand, sorted out their attack, but their attack has been blunt on this end of year tour. They're not executing well enough, making wrong decisions, forcing passes. They're struggling to break teams down. I'm not sure why they don't just trust their gut. They just go close contact, pick up and drive, short balls, pick up and drives once in the 5. Why do they want to force offloads? Why do they want to go wide all the time? They're so obsessed with going wide instead of just, doing the hard yards first and then going wide. So those are the things that Razor's got to look at. I think he's really got to look at bringing in a genuine, well-renowned attack coach. I don't think the mighty Ellison is really the man to do that. However, let's see how he learns from this. If he's going to be stubborn like Fozzie, Fozzie, the warning signs was there in the first year. He didn't change it, he didn't address it. He addressed it when he was under pressure, when he was forced to. Let's see if he makes these updates and he makes these changes, because Rassi Rasmus did it. He did it and it was successful. He made a few changes and tweaks to his staff and so. So let's see if Razor does it in that he can adjust, because for him, it's been his first year, so it's been difficult. But yeah, like I said, 6.5 B. I think that's a B about. I think that's the performance this year.
That's a C plus.
C
6.5.
Yeah. 6.5.
Actually,
C
six. Yeah. C.
B minus. Let's say B minus. B minus.
Then you're giving him a 7 then.
Nah, man, that's too high, man.
Exactly. C plus, Jade. Take it. Take it or leave it. C plus.
Let's go to 6. The C plus. But like I explained to you earlier, Scoop, if you look at the pack of forwards, right? If you look at the scrum is fine. The tight 5, the front row doing well. The props are exciting. Even if the box support will let New Zealand's got good props coming through. the hookers has really stood up, so far Moore and Cody Taylor, and then they get some Suitoki Howie still coming back next year. They've got really good hookers as well. Locks, it was a little bit of a test of character for Scott Barrett at times because Tupu Vai was finding his feet and then Perry Toops wasn't fit enough. There's a few guys coming through, so they need to be more physical or so. But Lucy's, we all at nothing, we can see the balance is not there. They really need a sixth flank. So whether they're going to get Shannon Fritzell back next year, we're not sure enough. But yeah, at the back, nines, Roygard is the man, but yesterday he had an off game. He was a little bit rushed at times. He was rattled at times yesterday, and we saw it. So he's got to learn that. He's got to learn to adapt to that. Not everything's going to go fluently for him. Bowden Barrett, McKenzie, we still don't know who is the number one fly off, who is it going to be, but we do know that we might see Richie Mwanga back next year as well. I think that he is the one that Razor one. Centers, they've been good on defense, however, not creative enough. They're not really putting the back three away like they should. And then obviously the wings. I think the wings lack speed, Scoop. I don't know what you think about it, but I think Jordan's lost a bit of pace. He's running with a handbrake up. Sevu Reese, I don't know where's his pace. Caleb Clark's been good this season. He's really been good. Mark Delia, good winning at times and then terrible at times as well. We can't go on like that. So they need to sort the back three out as well. They need to get that out, that sorted out. So there's a few ways that need to be there.
Yeah, I know somebody who never ran with a handbrake up, Vickers, who was a speedster and a hot stepper back in his sevens days. Vickers, did you used to run with the handbrake up in your time?
No chance.
Fair enough. But Jade is talking about the back three. I think Mpumelelo has been pushing for this topic about obviously Will Jordan. I think Hugh Griffin has also touched on it in a few of the other episodes as well. But I mean, if we look at Will Jordan, Bowden Barrett, Damian McKenzie, Bowden Barrett and Damian McKenzie at 10, and then we're looking at Will Jordan at 15. Has he lived up to the 15 jersey? Or should he just stay at wing, Vickers? I mean, what do you see from these positions? And also, what have you seen overall from a Razor perspective?
Yeah, so I think, look, this has been an ongoing conversation with us is when it comes to the selection. I think for me, I would have liked to see is even going into that Italy game, if he had continued with that loose trio that he had, was it against France? I think that would have been interesting to see for me. Even if you then went Lakai on at 6 as a guy who replaced Finau, obviously in that game, I think it would have been interesting because then it's almost like you've said to yourself, look, it can't get any worse than it is. We can only build from here, and I think that's what I feel he missed the opportunity to build. I understand the 10 jersey is still obviously sort of 50-50. I think if you look at he will have to, if he's going to use Bowden as a 10, he will have to start talking to the franchises and using the franchises must use Bowden at 10 because he's so key for the national team. And if Mackenzie is the guy, then obviously Mackenzie is starting at 10 for the Chiefs, which is, I don't believe he should be there. I think for me, he will either go to 15 or he will obviously wear the number 21 jersey if you go in a 5-3, sorry, number 22 jersey if you go in a 5-3 split. I think it sort of was, you could see though, this whole season for Razor was a learning of the kind of systems that they face within rugby, within the international stages. And I think he has definitely a lot of lessons to look at. And like you said, like Jade said, he has to be harsh on his coaching staff. I know he picked the coaching staff, so it is a little bit difficult when it's like that because it's guys that you believe and trust. But then you have to be honest with yourself if this is going the right direction, or are you just delaying the inevitable, which is firing someone the year before the World Cup? So those are the questions that you'll have to answer. I think looking at just the whole perspective of kicking off 10, we've discussed it many times. I mean, Hugh has mentioned it lots of times. Kicking off 10 and not of 9, that will also have to come into play. You will have to start realizing that this kind of rugby and this kind of level in rugby is so important to understand what the basics on how to approach a game, so that he can be able to obviously fulfill his role to the best of his ability. So looking at that, I still believe the best 15 for the All Blacks is Will Jordan. I would maybe just to throw it out there, maybe a good question would be not Mackenzie at 15 and Jordan at 14, and obviously Clark at 11, since they seem to have a little bit of a problem with that 14 jersey. They keep changing and chopping and changing. And as Jada said, they don't have that kind of pace at the moment. And who has that kind of pace will have to decide and to find a way on how obviously they can make that work. Yeah. So other than that, for me, I think this whole season for Razor has been a learning curve, and he has done well at times. I think the second test in Cape Town against South Africa was much better. The first week against England and into the second week, we saw a little bit of slight changes. So it's interesting how, and I still think New Zealand have actually done so well, guys, in their defense. I don't know if you guys have picked it up. I think for me, they've really stepped up in their defense since the start of the year, and I think that's where I feel they are going in the right direction. But maybe it's not as quick as everyone would like it to happen, but it is coming. It is there. So I wouldn't be so harsh on the coaching stuff, but I would definitely look at his selection. I think there were a couple of times where he should have been more consistent in picking the right group in terms of those units, instead of trying to give players obviously their 100 caps.
Yeah. Hugh? Sentimental 100 caps.
Yeah, what's the question, mate? Sorry.
No. It's your overall view on the All Blacks and Razor, and obviously the number 10 jersey, Mackenzie or Barrett, and then the number 15 jersey.
We know that Razor's not going to pick D-Mac at 15. If he's not going to go back on himself after persisting with him at 10 for so long, and then finally giving up and putting Bodie in. He's not going to undermine himself by putting D-Mac at 15. For my overall thoughts on the All Blacks, see what I said last week, and you guys brutally shot me down. Turns out I was completely correct. It's so weird. Everyone go and listen to last week's pod. But it's so weird for a team to have such a dominant pack and yet always be trying to go to the backs every time in attack. It's frustrating. It's been a problem all year. And the point that I keep making is that Razor now has the equivalent of a Super Rugby season with the All Blacks, 14 games. So if it was a Super Rugby season, we'd be saying this coach is struggling to make this attack work. So we've got to say the same for Razor here as well. So for me, that's what they've got to fix next year. They've got to be willing to use the forwards. I don't know whether it's just we must not do anything that resembles the Springboks. It's bad enough that we're winning scrum penalties as our main weapon. You know, we can't go trucking it up, picking goes with the All Blacks. But I think just quickly on Italy in this game, I think Italy will be disappointed. I've seen a lot of people talking about Italy like, oh, Italy did well, competitive. The scoreline wasn't too bad, performed bravely. No, I think Italy need to be disappointed with how they performed in this game. So their pack was well beaten. Their defence was cut apart several times. It's just the All Blacks were unable to capitalise. And they had a purple patch where they were in the All Blacks 22. And they went for the line out and they tried to maul it, didn't go anywhere. Played a few phases, got a penalty. Went to the line out, tried to maul it, didn't get anywhere, won a penalty. Went to the line out again, tried to maul it again, got turned over at the maul. And then at the scrum from that, the forwards gave away a scrum penalty and New Zealand cleared. The players they've got in the backs, Menoncello was sensational. Caparoso, we know what he can do for Toulouse. They should have gone for a backs move. They should have tried for the backs move. They didn't try anything. Even under advantage, they kept picking and going in the forwards and they got them absolutely nowhere. Garbisi, I'm sorry, he's one of the most hyped players. Went missing again in this team. Ignacio Brex has gotten a lot of praise so far this year. He was the captain on the day. he's a back. He should have called like forwards. You're going nowhere. Let's get it in the hands of the backs, and he didn't do it. So for me, a disappointing performance for Italy against the All Blacks, who I don't know if they'd have won, but they could have made it a lot more interesting.
Hugh, we don't have Alistair Coetzee as a coach for the All Blacks on this one. So Italy had zero chance of beating Razor Robertson last night. But a very good point that Hugh mentions before we head off to the end of this particular episode. Jeepers. Vickers, Hugh talks about the All Blacks not wanting to copy and paste the template of the Springboks because, as Hugh says, the All Blacks have one of the stronger forward packs. I think Jade also alluded to this earlier in his rant. But, I mean, when you look at the All Blacks, do you think they should implement or tweak their game plan or should implement the Springboks template if they are to get good results going into 2025?
Yeah, Scoop. Well, why not? I think if it's a winning, obviously template, why not? I always talk about there's nothing wrong with copying what the other teams are doing. There's nothing wrong with trying to understand how you can use your players to obviously use that winning template, and also you always your players will always feel better when they're winning. Your players will always feel better when if you start winning. Let's say if you copy a template and you start winning, then you can always adjust your plan. You can always adapt your structure based on from a winning culture perspective, and that's what exactly Rassi's done. The players, you can see the players are more open to the situation that they have now because they're coming from that winning sort of a template. And if you now we can even say the Boks are playing the old style of New Zealand rugby, if you can call it like that. They keeping the ball a lot more, they're attacking a lot more. So they are now changing to they change from a defensive sort of system to now in a sort of an attacking system, which is the players are actually excited about it. They're more happy about it. So there's nothing wrong with taking a template and making sure that you get those confidence wins, and then after that you start to tweak one or two things towards where you want to go. Yes, I don't think they're using their forwards a lot. I still believe they couldn't use them a bit more, and also they need to start looking at maybe some dominant carries, so as carriers within the group. I know Ardis Avia has been obviously I think he had probably one of his best games last night. You get a guy like Sititi who came on and we saw that he was pretty confident in his carrying. So you already have that in your corner. Now you need sort of like a 5 lock maybe who can also get into the program. I don't know if Barrett is the guy for New Zealand in terms of those carries, obviously, but definitely leadership is not bad. So it's a matter of just looking at how they can improve their team and start with the basics. Go back to the basics, use your forwards until you have the right. I think we always talk about having the right to go out wide. So yeah, look, like as I said again, it's a season for Razor that he can definitely learn from, and I hope for their sake that they're gonna obviously try and improve in their coaching staff and obviously improve within their structure and selection.
Fair. Jade, as stubborn as All Black rugby is, I mean, I say this based on what I've heard numerous times on the breakdown from ex-All Blacks and obviously listening to a lot of Foster interviews about not breaking away from their DNA. So basically forcing passes, unnecessary passing the ball, where you can just recycle, get the tackle, get the guys over the ball, recycle the play, and then start over again. But they still want to offload when the pass is not even on. And Vuyo talks about a bit of patience, a bit of tweaking in those certain elements. But as a All Black supporter, what do you think about what Vuyo has just shared here in this particular topic?
No, Julio's spot on. He's spot on. You can see he's not to float your boat for you, but I mean, you can see you coaching international teams and then you taking ideas from different things and applying it to your team. Nobody wrote the playbook on how to play rugby. Maybe Graham Henry thought, for years that they should just follow his playbook. Maybe Rassi will think so as well. Just follow my playbook. But there's no playbook. Nobody has the playbook of rugby. For me, if you look at the box, they did the basics well. And they started well. They did the basics, carrying hard, getting dominant, winning collisions, going forward. And once they did that, they could bring more freedom into the game. And that's why they brought in Tony Brown at the right time, because they got the players to go hard. They got the players to go out retard up front, but they've got the players to go wide as well. Now, for me, if I'm looking at a guy like the Mighty Williams, Tossie, I saw far more. I mean, the Mighty Williams, Tossie, over 145 kilograms, not going hard, looking to play tip-on. Looking to play tip-on or offload. For me, you're not using him correctly. Twice against France, where he hit the line hard, he got through. That's what you're going to have to do. Go hard. Get your hard carries. The Blues won Walk Super Rugby by playing that way. They just went hard, they carried up hard up the front, and they did it, and they won the collision. You don't need to be the biggest guy in the world. I mean, look at a small guy like Peter Lakai. When he gets on, he makes meters. He's not that big, but his body position is right. His positioning contact is right. He wins the post-contact meters, He gets over that one. He looks for soft shoulders. That's all what rugby is about now. So, I agree with Rio. Go back to basics. Carry hard and then go wide. New Zealand, for me, they create so many opportunities but don't finish. I still think, as good as Will Jordan is, I think he should stay at fullback. I won't move him, to win, but they're going to need a 14 win, like a Dougie Howlett, like a Jeff Wilson, just an out-and-out finisher on the 14, that finishes everything. And that's what they really, really need as well. But yeah, I think...
That's Will Jordan.
Yeah, but it's a 15, Scoop. You can't bring him back to 14 again, What you going to do? What you going to do? You're going to bring in a 15. You're going to bring Ruben Love back in, You're going to have to. But somebody will put up their Scoop. And like Will said as well now, they need a 5 lock. That 5 lock will be there next year. It's Fabian Holland. My pick for 2025 breakthrough player of the year is Fabian Holland.
Rustig. Take it easy. All right, Hugh, your final thoughts on this particular topic?
Yeah, not much to add. I agree with what everybody else has said. You have to use the forward back more, and they have to figure out this whole who's making the decision when they're not going anywhere after multiple phases. Who's making the decision to go to the backup plan, whether that be more box kicking, whether that be more up and unders. I do think that their contestable kicking against Italy was actually okay, but that's the next step of their evolution under Razor for me. At the end of the day, they finished the year with a very decent win percentage, but they've still got a few question marks over them.
No, fair, 100%. That brings us to the end of this particular segment or this particular episode, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you very much for listening to the Rugby Scoop Pod. Thank you, Vickers. Thank you, Hugh. Thank you, Jade. Thank you to the listeners. Scrumming Fly-Off, you've been noted. Ndabezindo, you've been noted. Mbumelelo, you've been noted. Grid Sports joining this particular conversation and the letter Z, I think. But nonetheless, guys, thank you very much for joining this episode and listening in and tuning into the Rugby Scoop. Have a wonderful Sunday. We always dishing it up with the Sunday Scoop. Have a wonderful week. Last week of September, guys. It's summer. It's bright place in South Africa. We are in the cold in the north.
Not September.
November. Anyway, all right, guys. Have a wonderful week. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you. Bye.